the drive, way back, it might be, it could be, it is. Holy cow, welcome to another broadcast of Bricks Behind the Ivy.
Hey, Cub fans, welcome to another episode of Bricks Behind the Ivy. Thank you so much to our awesome sponsors, Wrigleyville Sports, the best sports store in Wrigleyville, and Yaggy Road Roasting Company, based in Valparaiso, Indiana, serving cups of coffee just as special as the moments you drink them in.
Hello, welcome to Bricks Behind the Ivy.
Welcome to another episode of Bricks Behind the Ivy. If you want to support the show, make sure you're hitting that subscribe button. If you're listening to the audio, make sure you're subscribing and also leaving us a 5-star review to help spread the good news that is being a brickhead. Thank you so much for joining us this week as the Cubs have officially finished their first full workout as a team, and they head into this week looking at their first spring training game on Thursday. It really does move fast. Today we got a jam-packed episode. We have Jon Garcia coming over from Strat-O-Matic to talk to me about the 2025 Dodgers. Well, not exactly. We're going to talk about 2025 Dodgers have been, kind of proclaimed in the preseason as the best roster ever assembled. Well, to me and to other Cub fans, the best roster ever assembled was the 2016 Cubs team. So we're going to take a look at that 2016 Cubs team and see how they fare against the 2025 Dodgers using Strat-O-Matic as a simulation. The results might surprise and excite you, so stick around to listen to that. And also, Harry Carey is going to be joining us for the first time in a while today to give us some of his deep thoughts, so really excited for that segment. I do want to take a second to send out my condolences and send good vibes to our co-host, Mr. Pat Erickson. His father lost a long battle with dementia this past weekend, and he will be sorely missed by Pat. Pat has been such a huge integral part to what we do at Bricks Behind the Ivy, and just really, really feel for him and his family right now. So keep him in your thoughts and your prayers if that is what you do entertain on the religious side. But yes, Mr. Erickson, Pat's father, passed away this past weekend, and he is busy taking care of some family matters. So please send good vibes to him. Pat is the best. He's possibly one of the nicest people I've ever met. He is the type of person that would give the shirt off his back, and yeah, just hope that he can get through this time. Losing a parent is not easy, and I do wish him all the best. So send good vibes to one of the not just great people out there, but great Cub fans. So I do want to talk before we get into today's segments about not Alex Bregman specifically, but the financial implications surrounding Alex Bregman. There's some great articles out there that I think you should read. Bleacher Nation put one out. There's some commentary in the latest episode of Northside Territory with Sahadev Sharma and Patrick Mooney talking about the financial picture of this team and where they rank compared to other teams. And really, push comes to shove, not bearing the lead. This is now a mid-tier, financially involved team in regards to payroll, ranking between 13th and 15th, depending on if you're looking at the CBT counted payroll or if you're looking at actual annual payroll. This team is really taking a step back financially. We've always assumed as Cub fans that the first CBT threshold was a theoretical cap, as the team has not seemed to push beyond it many times in Ricketts' ownership of this team. And now there just seems to be some inherent allergy to doing so, in fear of having to pay, what I would say are, at least from my perspective, as someone who has a team that's worth over $5 billion, minor tax implications, not minor penalties, unless you repeatedly offend this mark, in which you start losing, some international money and some draft pick compensation. But it is tough to look at the 2025 Cubs and not be frustrated with not addressing some very specific things based on what is starting to sound like, even from Jed, stubbornness and ownership to adhere to contract terms that the rest of the league is interested in doing, like deferrals, because they are concerned with how deferrals might affect future payrolls for this team. It was even intimated this past weekend that they don't want to do deferrals because of how Jason Hayward and John Lester's deferrals had limited this team in the past, which that is embarrassing. Jason Hayward and John Lester. Yes, Jason Hayward wasn't the player that every Cub fan wants, and I feel like he is consistently referenced as why you don't want a long-term contract of high value with players when this fan base talks about it. But I'll counter real quickly. They're the Chicago Cubs. It's not my money. I don't care. I don't care what the value of the contract is. At some point, you have to pay money to get very good players, and whatever the market value of that player is what it costs. And there are other teams potentially willing to meet that value. The issue at hand is that there seems to be less and less teams interested in meeting that value across the league. So now the Cubs have kind of pigeonholed themselves into this area where agents think they should be spending that money. The Cubs aren't interested in doing so. So they're joining that group that they should be distancing themselves from, which would be by default the rest of the NL Central. We make more revenue, we make more money, we sell more tickets than every team in this division, and we've decided to use that as some weird advantage and logic to not spending what we can on this team. We're going into 2025, what I think is still missing significant swing and miss stuff in this rotation. And as much as folks were whining about the type of contract or the AAV that Alex Bregman ended up getting with the Red Sox, we are going into another season with a third baseman that isn't a traditional third baseman. Yes, he's been taking a ton of reps over there and has done nothing in the majors to prove that he is going to be another piece of this offense. And then if you take a step back, is second half Miguel Amaya what we're going to get? Is second half PCA what we're getting offensively? Yes, you got Kyle Tucker, but I thought when we moved the $25 million of Cody Bellinger that we'd reinvest that money into the team. But now the commentary is the Alex Bregman pursuit was an exception of pursuing additional things for this team, and that they are truly where their budget needs to be. But there's potentially an idea in which they might add more to this budget if things go well mid-year. So I'm really done. Sam Olber had said on his episode last week on Locked On Cubs, he had shared it on Twitter. I'm done talking about finances. I'm done talking about money to the best of my ability. I don't want to hear it anymore. I don't want to read anything about it. This is the bed that we've made. This is the team that's going to be on the field. I have a lot of apprehension and concern about being able to address needs in a free agent market and choosing not to because of fear of certain types of contracts. I am starting to lean away, unlike some fans, of truly blaming Jed in these situations. Joshua Kuznick, who is the former MLB agent who has a very interesting TikTok profile, had even changed his tune, as I had mentioned on a Bleacher Bunch this past winter, of saying that he thinks there are good baseball guys in the front office of the Chicago Cubs, but they are extremely limited by their owner. And now it seems like Jed, being on a contract year, seems a little more comfortable being forthcoming of, I have to do what I do with the resources I'm given. So yes, Jed has signed some players to contracts that I don't love, but when you're looking to hit on every fringe player because you cannot participate in the upper end of the market for whatever reason, then you're going to miss a lot because you're trying to capture lightning in the bottle and you're trying to lure these guys into a situation in which you're capturing lightning in a bottle with some sort of longer guarantee or these more risky contracts. And that's where threading the needle in the major leagues is extremely difficult. So, like I said, I'm done. I'm not going to talk about money anymore. It's probably going to rear its head if this team struggles out of the gate. They do have a tough start to the season with the Dodgers in the middle of the year, and they come home and they play a bunch of teams that are predicted to be playoff teams, and they will play Jared Jones and Paul Skeens more than other teams because they're part of the NL Central. And yes, there'll be parts of the schedule that are lighter, but it's going to be very, very frustrating until about mid-May when this team has gone 11-18 in May the last 2 years, which has sunk their season the last 2 years, wondering if just ponying up what he was looking for, Alex Bregman, and now looking at what the deferrals are of that contract and the present value. Yes, the Cubs offer was worth more present value, but that's just not what players are looking for. So were we really in on Bregman, or we were just trying to deter him or to get him to pick a contract that other teams weren't even interested in offering? Only time will tell. With that said, we are going to have deep thoughts with Mr. Harry Carey. Take it away, Harry.
Holy cow! Hello again, everybody, and welcome back to another Deep Thoughts with yours truly, good old Harry. What the heck is this, you might ask? Well, I'm getting ready for the baseball season. Boom, shakalaka, but you know what's great about this batter? You can do the...
Yummy!
Ooh, that's good. Well, we're excited down here at the old Wrigley Fire Bar and Grill because baseball season is upon us. The beloved boys from 1060 West Addison are down in Arizona right now in the beautiful spring cactus heat as we get ready for the 25 season. We got new faces, especially Kyle Tucker, spelled backwards as Roquette. He's going to be a good acquisition, but we've got a lot of great names. We got a lot of great new starting pitcher, relief pitcher, you name it. So we'll just have to stay tuned, study your scorecard, and find out who all these guys are in the spring to get ready for the summer. So for all of us here at the Wrigley Fire Bar and Grill, the Cubs will thrive in 25 and... Ooh, so long, everybody. Back to you, Jeff.
Thanks, Harry, for an always entertaining segment. Our last segment for the show before I leave you guys is Mr. Jon Garcia from Strat-O-Matic. We're going to talk about the 2025 Dodgers versus the greatest Cubs team in all of our existence, the 2016 Cubs. Check this out. Welcome in, Cub fans and fellow Brickheads, to another episode of Bricks Behind the Ivy. Today, I am joined by Jon Garcia from Strat-O-Matic, and he was nice enough to do with the folks over at Strat-O-Matic do a simulation of, we keep hearing about this Super Dodgers team, this 2025 Dodgers roster, which is, from my view, a really, really solid baseball team. But, the games are played on the field, not on paper, unless it's Strat-O-Matic. And I asked the Strat-O-Matic folks, just out of curiosity, the best Cubs team in my mind is a 2016 World Series team. So how would the 2016 World Series team, the pinnacle of Cub fandom, fare against the 2025 Dodgers? So Jon's joining me today to talk about that. We're going to learn a little bit about Jon as well. Jon, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for coming on.
Well, thanks for having me, Jeff.
So at Bricks Behind the Ivy tradition, what we usually do is ask people their baseball origin story, like what team got them into the sport, who or how they got into the sport, and get an idea of where their baseball fandom came from. So, Jon, how did you get hooked to baseball? Who brought you into the game? What brought you into the game?
Sure. So, I grew up in a baseball household. Baseball was always on TV. I grew up in Long Island, New York, but my dad was a big Red Sox fan, actually, even though he grew up in New York. My mom and grandfather were big Mets fans, but always there'd be baseball on television, on the radio. But I was a kid in 1996. I was 6 years old. So I became a Yankees fan. And it was a good era to grow up in for them, for sure. So I lived and breathed baseball. Everything was baseball, whether it was, pretending to throwing the ball against the stairs, catching a ball, everything I could do. I'd have a glove with me everywhere, just all about baseball.
Makes sense. In the 96 era of the Yankees, it's hard not to, as a kid too. I think as I've grown older and appreciated the game, I used to think there was this idea that, Yankee fans were just people who liked winners. But as I've gotten older and more mature and realized that's a ridiculous thing, I like the 96 team is on that period of time so impressionable. It's the highlight the Derek Jeter years. Like over here in my Cub Cave, I've got the MLB The Show edition that Jeter had, the Legend edition, and little statue of Derek. Like he was one of my favorite non-Cub players, and getting to go to his last game at Wrigley Field is one of a top core memory for me. Just being able to see him play on such historic field. I can't imagine, as someone who grew up in New York, seeing Derek Jeter every day and like how special that had to be.
Oh yeah, Jeter was my favorite player growing up. I loved it. I remember my first game at Yankee Stadium actually was a Yankees Red Sox game in '96, in September '96. So Nomar played in the game.
Oh wow!
And I'll never forget Archimedes Pozo played for the Red Sox, which is my favorite baseball name of all time.
That's a great one. That's a really good one. I'm also a big Nomar guy. I think that's an era of baseball, for, I guess, millennials would be the age. We had like Tejada, Nomar, the backhand of Cal Ripken Jr., Derek Jeter, just like this class of shortstops. Yeah. Well, yeah. On purpose. I didn't really like A-Rod, but this class of like power,
for sure.
the power hitting shortstop was all the rage. And I've looked at these guys, and they weren't like these flashy defenders, but it's where they would put like these power players in that era, and it just blows my mind just how the position has shifted once again to like these very glove first like offenses, a bonus type of individual to like manage BABIP and all the things that happen, like Dansby Swanson for Chicago Cubs, like extremely high floor and wins above replacement because of his insane defensive value. And anything he gives offensively is just kind of a bonus. And that's how a lot of the shortstops across the league are. And it's just such a shift. And some days I wish I could go back and just relive like that era of like the mighty shortstop and just really soak it in a little bit more.
Yeah, with that 4.5 ERA made you a top of the rotation starter.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of websites now that aggregate like lineups from like the 2000s all-star games, or these teams are like, look at this lineup, and there's not a single guy hitting like below 296, and they all have 25 home runs. And I was like, my lord, that's why baseball feels so different to some folks, because there wasn't a intense amount of offense. And now like the guys who hit 30 home runs, it's like, oh wow, he hit 30. Or like we had several players in the 40s and like a few in the 60s, and then Barry Bonds hitting 70. So it's just like, such a shift. So
baseball ebbs and flows. It always goes through that, right?
Exactly.
1930 was a big offensive season, and then it's always changing. Whether it's changing for the better, I don't know, but it's always changing.
Thinking about the idea of baseball on paper, you work for Strat-O-Matic. How did you end up at Strat-O-Matic? And can you just give us a little background for maybe people who aren't aware of what Strat-O-Matic is? It's a name to me synonymous with baseball or sports board games, and I think it's been around, as we were talking pre-show, a very long time. We have older listeners who probably are very familiar with Strat-O-Matic, and maybe some younger listeners who aren't as familiar with it or where it's still around. Can you just give us a little background on Strat-O-Matic?
Sure. So Strat-O-Matic, it's basically kind of the monopoly of sports board games, but it's been around since 1961, and every player gets their own card. I have one here that you probably can't see. It's Miguel Tejada from 2003, speaking of shortstops. But every player gets their own card, and you roll 3 dice, and 1 die corresponds to which card you're looking at. Whether it's a batter or the pitcher card, the other 2 dice give you the results. So it's a play at-bat by at-bat game, and you roll dice, and you keep score, and it's a full game of baseball. It's kind of like the original fantasy sports game, where every player is rated not just for their offense, but we rate players for defense, range, errors, stealing, ability to get a lead, bunt, hit and run, grounding into double plays. Basically, everything that you could do in baseball is there in Strat-O-Matic, and the player is accurately represented by how they performed in a particular season. So we were talking about earlier how I actually first started playing baseball games. I played MLB Showdown, which, similar, had a dice, and you'd come up with a result that way. But shortly, a couple of years after I started playing that, I found Strat-O-Matic, and that was the be-all and end-all for me. I stopped playing basically any other game. Strat-O-Matic was the go-to. I used to create my own leagues where I draft my own teams. I had this 16-team league, and I'd play. I remember I played out as much as I could of the 2001 and 2003 seasons. I could replay how they actually did. I used the actual starters and actual lineups as much as I could. And I love the game. So when I went to college, I in 2007, I created my own online computer league with the Strat-O-Matic Windows game. And then in 2011 was Strat-O-Matic's 50th anniversary. And I ended up going to a big event that they had in the city with the intention of trying to see if I can get a job out of it. And I happened to meet Hal Richmond's son. Hal is the inventor of the game and still is involved in the day-to-day of Strat-O-Matic. But I happened to meet his son, Adam, and there were no jobs available at the time, but I kind of pushed because I graduated, and eventually he created a spot for me. And ever since then, I've been there now for 14 years, and now I'm the chief content officer of the company.
So what kind of things do you do in regards to content? Obviously, we're in the modern era, and you're on a show that is a type of content. What kind of things do you guys do for Strat-O-Matic content?
I create the cards, so I do a lot of the research behind all the card creation. But beyond just creating cards, we do a lot of simulations for various places around the country. And this kind of started we did one-offs prior to that, but really started heavily in 2020 with COVID. So when the season was delayed, we have a product for our online and Windows game that is called Baseball Daily. And what that does, it creates a new digital card of a player every single day based on season projections, how they've performed season to date, and their recent stats for hot cold, basically. So a new card gets created every day based on how they do last night. Guy goes 2 for 4 and hits 2 home runs. The card's going to reflect that. And it's not just the offense, it's the defense that shifts, it's the stealing, it's the pitcher endurance, whatever it is. All these ratings in the card could shift based on how they're performing in season. So we took that and the actual 2020 schedule as it had been scheduled and simulated out how we would have expected the season to go. We made transactions we thought they would have happened based on how they were performing in our sim season. And we did every day from, I think, March 30th, whenever the opening day was, all the way until July when the season came back. And that got picked up around the country. Various media outlets picked it up, almost reported it as if it was the actual season. And since then, we really dove heavily into simulations. So we have every baseball season back to 1871 for a computer.
Oh, wow.
So it's 150 plus years of baseball history. On top of that, we have 30 plus individual Negro League seasons. We have a Cuban stars. We have and Japanese seasons. So we have, players really throughout baseball history, not just Major League Baseball in America itself. And we're able to take players from different eras and play them against each other. Draft leagues, greatest team tournaments, whatever it is, we can pit two teams against each other. And part of what I do in these simulations is make sure that these teams play accurately to how they did historically. So that's creating computer managers that would make them perform how we would expect that team to perform in this particular tournament or series, whatever it is, based on how they were managed historically. So in the simulation that we did for the 16 Cubs and the 25 Dodgers, we would use our Baseball Daily product to create the 25 Dodgers, which is based on projections for the upcoming season. And they would account for transactions and have that team represented as we would expect them to be, their roster to be this year. And I created a computer manager based on how I'd expect them to play. particularly in a short series. And the 2016 Cubs, same thing. They're kind of specifically the computer manager specific for a World Series type environment.
The Strat-O-Matic brand, I think, is just synonymous with sports, and it's got to be such a cool opportunity to be kind of working in this space and creating content. And let's shift to the main topic at hand and the content you've created for us. The 2025 Dodgers versus the 2016 Chicago Cubs. So you sent a document over to me. It's been a few weeks now, and it takes time to schedule these types of things. With kids and all those like regular jobs and etc. But you guys did a simulation, a 7-game series of the 2025 Dodgers versus or a World Series, and it turned out to be 7 games. Should have buried the lead. Where the 2025 Dodgers, the anointed super team, versus the best defensive team in history, the 2016 Chicago Cubs. So just give a little background of the process of the sim and, some of the results we saw and how the 2016 Cubs fared versus this team.
Sure. So, like I said, the teams are formulated based on how we would expect them to perform in a short series. So 2016 Cubs, obviously you're having David Ross catch Lester, and you're Hayward's not necessarily starting for them because he didn't in the playoffs, right? You're mixing and matching based on how you would expect that team to play against that particular opponent also. But I'm able to take those two teams and put them in a 7-game series. And obviously the Cubs with that pitching staff and the defense. Game 1, the Cubs beat the Dodgers 3-1. Lester pitched. Turned it over to Strop and Chapman. David Ross hit a 3-run home run. That was all the runs for the Cubs.
There you go.
Snell. Game 2, opposite. Dodgers 3-1. Will Smith hit a home run. Kyle Hendricks gave up a couple of runs, scattered over 6 innings. Let's see. Game 3, we had a 4-1 Cubs lead until the bottom of the 9th. And, in a lot of these games, Chapman, right? He gives up base runners, and Dodgers able to put it over. They scored 4 runs in the bottom of the 9th with the Max Muncy home run. Game 4, Cubs beat the Dodgers 7-2. Home runs from Fowler and Bryant.
There we go.
Now the pitching takes over for both of these teams. Game 5, Dodgers beat the Cubs 1-0 on a Teoscar Hernandez home run. Game 6, Cubs 1, Dodgers 0. Goes to Game 7. So this is the fun stuff now, right? Game 7. Arrieta, Glasnow, both give up a run in the first inning. Cubs manage to score again in the bottom of the 3rd, and then break out in the bottom of the 7th to win the game 6-1 and win the series.
It's really was that at Wrigley, or is that just there's okay? There we go. That's the dream, the hoisted trophy in Wrigleyville.
Javi Baez home run, the 3-run homer in that inning. The Cubs had a deep lineup too, especially when in a short series like that, when Hayward doesn't necessarily have to play, right? Zobrist can move to the outfield. Baez is in the lineup. Contreras can catch. It's not just so it's not just like their regular season lineup. It's specific to like how they would play in the postseason.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, especially like in those the playoff discussion and just getting in and who's hot. And obviously, like this is a stat-based simulation. And yeah, that 2016 team was just top to bottom so solid. I think, not to go down this path too far as Cub fans, I think there was just expectation of that team continuing to get better and better because I believe they're the youngest group that ever won the World Series on average age. Just with, Bryant and Rizzo and Baez and Contreras all like at the beginning stages of their career and really just being able to be on the highest stage that quickly with Joe Madden and what he brought to the table. And yeah, I think the series is interesting to me because I think I've always thought that the strength of that 2016 Cubs team was the starting pitching depth, which is so interesting thinking of like how things have shifted and how bullpens are deployed in the playoffs. And there's just not this focus that inning eaters in the rotation. And
Sure.
it really does mitigate, as a stats nerd, it mitigates the views you get on top end arm talent that's in the bullpen. There's a reason these guys are in the bullpen. It's not that they're bad. It's just, they have a very specialized pitch, a specialized thing they do. They can't be seen multiple times. They're supposed to be used in short bursts. And I've wondered, just in this simulation and just in general with baseball, if we're going to see more starting pitching in the playoffs or a bigger focus on that, knowing that, like we saw like the Milwaukee Brewers last year, we saw, the Detroit Tigers last year, that, if you don't have enough starting pitching, your bullpen's going to get exposed just because you're going to see the same lineup so many times and they're going to get a good look at your guys and you're just going to, each time you see someone, you gain a little bit of information.
Yeah, and I think it makes sense that baseball would shift back a little bit towards starting pitching. Again, right, like we talked about in the beginning, it ebbs and flows a bit, baseball. Certainly in the playoffs, it makes sense that these starters go a little bit longer because, the relievers do get exposed and the longer the series goes. I personally, I think baseball needs to make rules in order to make that happen.
Yeah.
They've always let baseball evolve on its own, and all of these other sports kind of push the sport where they want it to go. And baseball's never done that until recently. They got scared off after the DH. They didn't make a rule change until Manfred. And I know a lot of people don't like that, but baseball really needs to push the game where they want it to go, and I think they're doing that now. But I would like them to bring back a starting pitcher if they can.
Yeah, baseball is the average age of a baseball fan is 57 and a half. It's the highest of all the professional sports, which, generally when you have that age, it means they've been watching potentially a very long time and people don't like change. And baseball, I like to describe, as people listen to the show, as a soap opera. Like you can't just pick it up in the middle. You'll have an idea of what's going on in the individual episode, but you're not going to appreciate the minutia because you haven't been watching the previous 30 years, or you don't have the backstory of the individual interactions. Like that's what makes the game great. And just such a hard sell in the modern era. But like folks like you who are creating content for Strat-O-Matic and, hopefully people who are watching Bricks Behind the Ivy, trying to highlight, the accessibility and the joy of how long the marathon is each year and what to appreciate about it. So thank you so much for doing this. If people are looking for Strat-O-Matic or looking for your content, where can folks find you?
You can find us on our website, Strat-O-Matic.com, Facebook, X, Instagram. But yeah, we have everything is on our website and our social media.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jon, for coming on Bricks Behind the Ivy. I'll put a link to Strat-O-Matic so you guys can check out their products in the description of this episode. Make sure you're commenting, liking, and give us your thoughts. Do you think the 2016 Cubs, like they did in this sim, would wipe the floor with the 2025 Dodgers? Or do you think the 2025 Dodgers are truly this elite team? Leave some thoughts in the comments, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. Thank you so much, Jon. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks.